if there wasn't a bright light in my eyes, I'd be able to describe how beautiful this theatre is. I know that to be the case, and I know it to be in memory of Garibaldi and many other great people. So thank you all for coming here tonight, because this is an amazing event. And I want to say a big thank you to many of my friends that are here tonight, to Graham Morris and Ronnie Campbell, great friends of mine in Parliament, fantastic comrades, real support. Davy Hopper for all his work for the Durham Miners Gala, the miners and everybody else. Very proud to call Davy a very good friend of mine. To my union, Unison, for support and nomination tonight, and to Dave Prentice for coming along and delivering that message of support from my union. And I want to say a big thank you to all the councillors from across the region that have come, because we've achieved something quite remarkable tonight. There's councillors here from Newcastle, Gateshead, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Durham and Northumbria. So, who says our campaign can't unite the Labour Party, eh? And I want to say a special thank you, and this will deeply embarrass him. He'll be very annoyed later and he'll tell me off, no doubt, but I'll cope. Can we say a big thank you to the person and all the volunteers in this campaign who've done so much of the work, David Stockdale and all the team of volunteers. I've already denounced me and refusing to speak to me ever again. And I thank everyone that's come along tonight from long distances and short, and I'm sorry that we couldn't find an even bigger theatre to have this event in, because we've got, I understand, 1,280 people in here, and we had at least 500 in the street outside when we did an overflow meeting. There are many in this audience I want to say a special thank you to, but there's one person I want to recognise, because he's done such fantastic work for so long for awakening our imagination, awakening our conscience, and explain to people that through film and art you can change minds, you can highlight crises, and you can explain and understand deep and important historical processes. So could you say a warm welcome to Ken Loach, my old friend. This campaign has done is quite incredible. It's brought together very large numbers of people. This is a summer like no other, because normally all of us here are together in protest about something. You know, we've all been on protest. We're always stopping something, against something, defending something. You know how it goes. But this is something different. We're actually together asking for something, demanding something, and doing something together, a concept of doing things together in unity, doing things together that will get a message across. So in addition to the 1,280 in here, the 500 outside, there's at least 500 people watching it on live stream at the present time. So say hello to all of them as well. So that makes it one of our biggest events. One of our biggest events that we've had, and we've got lots more to go. This, I think, is the 75th event we've had, including the hustings events, and we've got many more to go all over the UK. And what's bringing us together is, of course, the hope and optimism, but there's a number of principles surrounding our campaign. The first one is that we are about politics, we're political, we're putting out ideas, we put out papers on environment, on women, on economy, on railways, on housing, on education, and there's many more to come. Every single one of those papers is a document for consultation. We want and welcome ideas. When we put out some ideas about development of infrastructure and economy in the north and northeast, we got 1,200 replies in a few days of people making good constructive suggestions. This is a campaign about ideas, about unlocking the talent, the imagination, the enthusiasm that's there amongst ordinary people. No more top-down policy making from discreet tables in weekend hotels somewhere. Let the policies of our movement be our policies. And the other difference, which is to me a very important one, I understand there's some people out there saying bad things about other people. It's truly shocking. I understand there's people being incredibly rude about other people out there. That's even more shocking. And there's people saying all kinds of bad things about lots of us. Well, I tell you what, I don't care. I tell you what, I'm not interested. People can say anything they like. We are not doing that kind of politics. We're not into that kind of Yabu sucks politics, you're a worse person than me. We're into serious debate and serious enlightenment of people and enfranchisement of ordinary people to take part in a genuine, open political process. That's how we got this campaign going, and that's how it's going to be. But it's also a big wake-up call. It's a big wake-up call because we had a banking crisis in 2008. That banking crisis wasn't caused by greedy nurses fiddling overtime sheets. It wasn't caused by park workers not putting enough fertiliser down to get the flowers to grow. It wasn't caused by refuse collectors missing the odd bin bag. It wasn't caused by doctors overprescribing any particular medicine. It was actually caused by unregulated banks, unregulated bankers, overpaid bank executives, and certainly massive bonuses paid to them. It was caused by investments in the subprime mortgage crisis in the USA, and it should have been a warning and a wake-up call to all of us. It was caused by a worshipping of the concept of money over people, and it was caused by that whole mentality and mindset. So when the banking crisis came about, yes, of course it was right to bring the banks into public ownership. It was also right to put what's euphemistically called quantitative easing into the banks as a kind of low-price loan. I mean, I must have thought, when I first heard the word quantitative easing, I thought it was an upmarket form of laxative, actually. And then discovered it was something else. But we did the right thing to bring the banks into public ownership, and the problem was we didn't really bring them into public ownership. We merely bought the shares to keep them going and allowed them to carry on in the same way. So George Osborne is now selling off our shares in our bank at a loss to his mates in the City of London. That is sorry, that is just completely wrong. And that should simply not be happening. But then came the problem, because after the banking crisis came the issue of the borrowing that had taken place to pay for it, and what you did about that. Well, you borrow, yes, you then decide to pay it off in record quick time, and who pays the price of that? Every cut in every benefit, every person who can't get the help they need, every adult social care crisis that exists, every hospital waiting list that's got longer, every school place that isn't there, all those kind of issues all come from a narrative that somehow or other the entirety of the public services have to pay for the banking crisis of 2008. That is the whole austerity agenda. But I think the austerity agenda, watch it played out in country after country, is actually much more of a political agenda about shrinking the state, shrinking public services, and saying that we can't have those things that we believe to be right and necessary. And you can't therefore cut your way to prosperity, you have to grow your way to prosperity. So instead of cutting and selling off state assets, which is what this budget and this government is doing, we have to offer something different. Our problem, and this is a harsh truth that we have to face, our problem was that in 2010 we were offering cuts on a level that Thatcher would have been proud of, probably, had she been able to make those kind of cuts. And in 2015, we were still offering austerity light when we should have been offering an alternative to austerity called an economy that works for everybody, not for the few. And so, when people say that Labour can only get back by being being economically responsible, I ask the question in this way. Is it responsible to allow the gap between the richest and the poorest to grow and grow to the obscene level that the 5 richest people in Britain own the equivalent of the total wealth of a fifth of the rest of the population? The levels of inequality in this country are the worst in Europe and designed to get worse by this whole process. Surely we can, must and should do something very, very differently. And so, our proposals are to challenge austerity, challenge the agenda of austerity and invest in people and invest in a growing economy. You do that by controlling rents, so we're not subsidising high rents through the welfare system. You do that by raising wages, raising the minimum wage to the TUC figure of £10 an hour as a good start, and you invest in the needs of people, which in turn, of course, creates jobs, and it becomes a virtuous circle. And so, one of our suggestions is, as Graham was explaining, a national investment bank. That national investment bank would invest in infrastructure, would invest in housing, would invest in high technology jobs, would invest in the future prosperity of the entire community and population. If I was making this proposal, or we were putting this idea forward in Germany, nobody would be the least bit surprised and say, well, that seems a perfectly reasonable and sensible thing to do. It's only because the economic and political thinking in Britain has moved so far to the right that it's seen as particularly outrageous and particularly wildly radical thing to do. So that's one of the suggestions. But there's some other points that our party has got to understand. All of us here love the National Health Service. We love it because of the principle behind it. The principle behind it is a very, very powerful one. And last week we were in South Wales. We went to where Nye Bevan had been the MP, to Tredegar. We went to the Nye Bevan House and we had a health service rally at the memorial stones to him above the town. And in Nye Bevan House there is a very interesting statement from him. He said, if somebody is ill and needs help and cannot afford to go to a doctor and is therefore denied help, how can that society call itself civilised? Very sensible point that Nye made. So, the National Health Service is there as a human right free at the point of use as a purpose. But it's under threat. It's under threat by an internal market. It's under threat by the competition between the profit greed of a number of private sector companies that want to take over parts of the National Health Service. And it's under threat because it's chronically underfunded in some areas. And that in turn means that it could become a health service of last resort, not a first port of call. I'm sure that is what the Tories want. So, our proposals are quite simply these. End the internal market within the National Health Service, bring back planning on the basis of health need, and a health service that recognises the ghastly health inequalities that exist all across this country. You can take a bus ride across any major city in Britain, in London, Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and you can measure by the distance you travel from the leafy suburbs to the poorer circular inner city areas, the life expectancy of people. It can drop between 10 and 15 years during one of those bus journeys. That is health inequality brought about by poverty, by bad housing, by unemployment, by insufficient wages for children to be fed properly. That is an issue the NHS has to deal with, but you also have to deal with it by economic and social policy means to ensure those grotesque levels of inequality do not persist in our society. Whilst we do have this attraction and attachment to the National Health Service, I think we need to have another thought as well, and that is about the ideas of a welfare society that we live in. When Beveridge wrote the Beveridge Report in 1942, during the